I just mentioned in the last segment the way that our democracy is the foundation of everything else. Our entire political process is built on the foundation of our democratic process. And so if we don't have a functioning democratic process, if that's threatened, if that's damaged to such an extent, then all these other battles, all these other policy debates we have up here are irrelevant because we need our democratic process to battle those out. And within the context of that, I saw a post on X by Ron Filipkowski that made this point in a devastating fashion that I'm about to lay out, which is to say, we're not in a normal political time because we're not just up here battling out policies. We're also talking about an individual who's likely going to be the nominee of one of the two major parties, who threatens the foundation. And so treating this election and this moment like it's normal is incredibly irresponsible and a disservice to the broader public when talking about the way that the media talks about different subjects. And so an example of this is while Trump is actively doing and saying all these things, not to mention his record, but just in this moment, doing and saying all these things that make clear how much of a threat to our Constitution, democracy, and rule of law he is, as his former top general, Mark Milley, has called out recently, we're still able to, and by we, I mean the media, I try not to, but the media as kind of a group, get lost in the normal political dialogue that is had. And it's real strange and unfortunate. Here from Ron Filipkowski. Trump has called for terminating the Constitution if he determines an election was fraudulent, called for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs to be executed, says he will remove media companies from public airwaves who don't treat him well. So let's do a story on Biden sneakers. And then he provides screenshots first here from Axios. Scoop, Biden don't let him trip strategy, new shoes, balancing exercise, shorter stairs. And then here from the Daily Beast, after being mocked for tripping over a sandbag in June, Axios has reported that President Joe Biden has been working on his balance with a physical therapist, has been seen wearing tennis shoes to improve traction. So is it on its own horrible for an outlet to report on something that's not super important, but is notable to the readers, interesting to the readers? No. And you're not always going to cover the most important story. I get that. But this more serves as an example, a blatant reminder of what we're talking about here. Because it's hard to solidify into little anecdotes that can be shared the broader, very complex phenomenon of this current moment being treated too normally. Trump, in the interview with Meet the Press with Kristen Welker, being treated too normally. And then, in an effort to prove that they're not biased, so many outlets obsessing over what are relatively small things when it comes to Biden, because look, we also report on things that aren't so flattering about Joe Biden, whether it be his age 24/7 being discussed or other things as well. And so in a moment where we have such a crucial, basic part of our broader political process, the foundation of it being threatened and at stake in this election, reporting about different events and about this election and about the horse race need to be calibrated accordingly. And to just go through this, terminating the Constitution, Ron Filipkowski brought up, here's the post there. A massive fraud of this type of magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. Trump's words on Truth Social. And then the Mark Milley point. Just recently, this is an act so egregious that in times gone by, the punishment would have been death, Trump said about his former top general. They are almost all dishonest and corrupt, but Comcast, and this is Trump right on True Social again, with his one-sided and vicious coverage by NBC News and in particular MSNBC, often incorrectly referred to as MSDNC, should be investigated for its country-threatening treason. And he goes on to say that he's proudly proclaiming, if he wins the presidency, that NBC, MSNBC, and the other lamestream media outlets will be thoroughly scrutinized. And then why should NBC or any other of the corrupt and dishonest media companies be entitled to use the very valuable airwaves of the United States free? They are a true threat to democracy and are, in fact, the enemy of the people. So now he's talking about a blatant explicit attack on the press, trying to get them off the airwaves, or I guess make them pay a price. I don't know. That is disturbing. Terminating the Constitution, proudly calling for on social media. Threatening with death one of his former top generals for calling him out. That's not what he will explain it as, but that's exactly what it is. And going after freedom of the press. He doesn't like their coverage, so he wants to use his power as president to go after them. But how is Biden dealing with his trips? And, he really did have that gaffe that one time. Lots of times, I get it, but I'm just saying, the story being, or whatever it might be, we have to contextualize and calibrate our brains for this moment. And then when we interview Trump, as we've seen from multiple outlets, don't treat him normally. Don't, okay, and now give me your thoughts on the economy. And it needs to be the entire interview, I guess, or maybe don't do the interview, grilling him on the details of his attempts to overthrow our lawful process on quotes like this and on threats like this.
His opponent. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. That means that if I win and somebody wants to run against me, I call my attorney general. I say, listen, indict him. Well, he hasn't done anything wrong that we know of. I don't know. Indict him on income tax evasion. You'll figure it out.
A guy running on locking up his political opponents. That is a threat to the rule of law, like we haven't seen in a very long time. Not to mention his attempts in 2020 to overthrow our lawful process, as he's now being indicted for, and keep himself the president. Not to mention him threatening his former top general. Not to mention his calls to terminate the Constitution. Not to mention his threat to the freedom of the press, and on it goes. And he won't have guardrails this time. He doesn't have to worry about running for re-election. This is it. It matters so much. And going back to our kind of comfortable approach to politics of, all right, Trump has these views on policies, Biden has these, and let's see kind of where they contradict and why we should think one is better than the other. This is so much more foundational than that. And I wish the entirety of the media could be calibrated to that fact. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show and get a bonus show on the weekends, you can do so by going to lukebeasleyshow.com/membership. That's lukebeasleyshow.com/membership, and there's a link in the description.